outside, so I can bring it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge room with a little Mexican.
Good morning, grandson of Bill Ronald. Good morning, Mr. Yogananda Jr.
Oh, yes,
How are you?
great.
Nice to see you.
You know, they,
Did you know that at Steve Jobs' funeral,
yes,
everybody was given a copy of the Yogananda's or biography? He gave to
yes,
everyone.
I know, he said one thing that I would like to have everyone do, is read this book.
There you go.
Yes,
So we can thank him for his, we can thank him for the nice walk.
yes,
Which is useful for translating. Be scared of AI. There's the one great idea. We call it FI. Female intelligence. As long as that will stop them doing anything nasty with AI. Okay. Really so excited about that. Okay. In Sanskrit, are we ready? Here is your word. In Sanskrit, in English, that's a lady good. Here on a single occasion, the blessed Lord must well. Lord, and self teachings. Meditation of God. We are license by body, we are many, we are Body, mind, your life to be free of any intrinsic reality. It's freedom. Freedom is matter. Freedom is not other than matter. Neither is matter other than freedom. Likewise, sensations, conceptions, mental functions, and consciousness are also free. All things are freedoms. Unceased freedoms. This is internal consciousness, ignorance and association of ignorance and so
Well, there's some, it's good out, but see, it's it's. Such is great silence, excel much that we to be known as super transcendent wisdom, much that I yet found out. Just a word of Gati, Gati, Para, Gati, Para, Samgati, Buddhi, Sa, 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 Gati, Gati, Para, Gati, Para, Samgati, Buddhi, Sa. I'm going to comment there this morning of the sutra. You know, one thing we have to know is that all the know this and know I, know here, know and everything. This means they understand implicitly because there are the 100,000 verse Prajnaparamita, transcendent wisdom. There's the 25,000, there's the 60,000, and there's so many different long and short versions. This is the short one, not the shortest. The shortest one is one syllable. Can you guess what syllable? What did you say? Did you say oh? No, well, no. Not quite, but in a way, yes. In the sense that the one syllable is you know, the letter A, what we call A, but it's actually like cat. The short one, there's two the short one, So is the prime syllable, and remember when we say amoral can be a negation, you know, and aseptic, you know, can be negating the word that follows, right? And iconic, you know, then you put some sort of confidence in between, and then also without the vowels, there's no language. You know, you can't pronounce a consonant without a vowel. So it's the life of the world. You know, so it's a negation of the openness and the freedom from which things are created. Life is created.
So that's the shortest one. So this one is there. So therefore, when it says know this and know that, what it means is no intrinsically real I, no intrinsically real ear, no, etc. Intrinsically real would mean that the eye and the nose, etc., had an identity that was, that, for example, Plato thought that it was I-ness, the abstract transcendental form of the idea of an eye or the nose. That was what made a nose what it is. They have that kind of old-fashioned metaphysics. So they had an essence, in other words. Whereas Buddha's discovery is that it's only all things are only relative. And their freedom from being objectively absolute in some sense, and the freedom of the self from being objectively absolute, is what makes us able to have a self that interacts with the world, because it's relational. You follow? And there's no problem of absolutizing things, which is our basic psychosis. Each one thinks I'm the absolute thing, and then everybody else must think they're the absolute thing. So that's why we're also paranoid about each other. Because I think I think I'm the most important thing. But then I secretly know, I don't really mention it, but I know that that's what you people all think. Each one of you is the most important. But we don't agree with each other. Except Mom thought I was the most important for a really short time. And then, of course, when you fall in love, you think each other is the most important. And you're really happy for a while because one person agrees with you that you're so great. Everybody else hates both of them. They can't stand it. You don't think they're important. They're jealous. So that's the thing. So that's one commentary. So then this Western people have translated from following the example of a wonderful translator called Edward Conrad, who translated perfection, paramita. They have a role in perfection of wisdom. But in a way, it is perfection. But the thing about wisdom is, it gets perfected when it takes you beyond possessing wisdom. That is to say, you know everything non-dually, you know everything by being everything. You feel one with it also, and that's how you know it. You don't know it as like a person, I'm wise, I know that, So, or generosity. When you give a gift without thinking, I get it, they received it, and this is the gift. And so I need a reward, and then later I regret it, or whatever, In other words, transcendent giving is where it just happens. And you don't even think about it, because you just are an open being. And you just enjoy your joy is sharing and giving. That's transcendent giving. It's not perfection would be, I'm such a great giver, I'm so generous. And then that would spoil the merit of it, where you go beyond your self-centeredness in giving. So the paramita means to go to the other shore. Para means the other shore. Ita is the past participle, to go, one of the verbs to go. The paramita, having gone beyond. So therefore transcendent. Okay, that's one thing. Second, the Buddha entered a teaching samadhi. What is that? The Dharma Paryaya. And the teaching samadhi means that he went into a state of mind. And remember, because he's Buddha, he is a Buddha, he thinks he's everybody else. So he goes into a state that gives them a kind of artificial immersion in a feeling in Buddha mind. And so in his presence, they feel kind of lifted out of the usual feeling of isolation and alienation and loneliness from others, sort of doing things to reach out from it, but basically feeling isolated in a separated, absolutized, intrinsically real, intrinsically objective, intrinsically identifiable self. And they temporarily are lifted into a field of illumination of the profound. And the profound is where you go beyond that sense of separation and you go to the deep thing where we are all one. Heard that wonderful lady, Leela, what did she say yesterday? I don't see her. Leela said plasma, where it's all clear like plasma. But it's not actually lava, that's a little too toasty. It's It's beyond duality of hot and cold, you know, like, it's infinite, therefore it doesn't impose itself. But everything can make itself out of it, that's for to make it out of it, that's an art. Okay, so that's second. So when he goes into that, then that's very significant. That empowers Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara's name is so wonderful. Ishvara means God. And the creator in Indian culture, still today, the different monotheisms they have in India, they have 3 or 4 of them. Now there are, the creator is Maha Ishvara, the great creator of God. So, but Avalokita means who looks down with loving concern. So Avalokita is who is always looking down with loving concern in all the beings. So it's a loving God rather than a creator God. It's one who cares for the happiness of the being and can bear the suffering of the being. So it's a kind of critique of the idea of a great being who's a big fat God and disconnected from the people they created, so therefore is not to be blamed for their suffering. And actually there's an actual sutra in India that was very popular where one yogi, not Buddha himself, but Buddha sometimes does talk to Brahma, who the other people think is the creator. But this is different one. This one, Sutra, Kevada Sutta, in Pali. And this yogi reaches the throne room of Brahma, the creator, who thinks is the creator. And he asks him, how did he create the world? And how does it work? Because he wants to understand. And then Brahma brushes him off, like the Wizard of Oz sort of situation. And he brushes him off at first. And then when the guy's leaving disappointed, Brahma comes out of the throne room by his magic. He's a god. And he then says, so don't leave, I'll tell you. I couldn't tell you in there because those godlings in there hanging around in my throne room, they think I'm the creator. And if I said I wasn't, they'd get all freaked out. I don't have any tricks up here. So I'm telling you now that I didn't actually create the world. I don't exactly know how it functions. I'm just the biggest, most powerful, luckiest, happiest character around here. And I do my best for people. And I have a job for Buddha, by the way, when you go back down and ask him how things work. And that is, please tell people that I'm not omnipotent. I'm very creative and very powerful, and I do really good things whenever I can for everyone. But sometimes terrible things happen to people. And I don't mind when they praise me when good things happen. But when bad things happen to them, I don't want them hating me, thinking I did it. So I want them to know that they have responsibility of all that happens to them as well as trying to help them. But I think it's really wonderful. But there was a time when many people were monotheistic, but they just weren't that fanatical in India. So he could say and speak like that. They could have stories like that. So Avalokiteshvara, that's the meaning. So it's the Heart Sutra is particularly marvelous because in a way it's wisdom of selflessness, of freedom that the Prajnaparamita is pushing, it's emphasizing, but it puts it in the mouth of the emanation of the compassion and loving concern of all enlightened beings. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, who really is a Buddha, really, but the Buddha manifesting as a Bodhisattva. Okay, that's second thing. So then here he says, he realized his 5 body-mind processes were free of any intrinsic reality. So that's where he sees them as relative things. And I think I didn't emphasize this enough the first day on the physics of yesterday morning, which is that Buddha's discovery of freedom is simultaneously the discovery of relativity. It is a prediction that is only finally fulfilled in the Western sciences by the quantum people in the 1920s, when they realized that everything dissolves under analysis. So relative things have no irreducible core. They're like onions. You peel them and there's nothing in the core. But that doesn't prevent it from making you cry when you chop it. It still relates. And in fact, that's the essence of its relativity. So it's the freedom or emptiness or voidness, or however we translate, or selflessness, doesn't mean you don't have a self. But what it means is the self that you have is purely relational. And therefore you're totally interconnected with everything. And that's what Einstein also argued, that's why he called his theory a theory of relativity. Even though he knew that he was dealing with a lot of, absolutizing people who wanted to have, and even he mentioned God does not play dice. And but he was a really sweet man, actually. I actually met him. And he gave me 12.5 cents, actually. He gave me money. And it was a story, I'll tell the story later, but he was very kind. Give me a quarter, me and another guy, so we split it. So, for no reason. Well, we were supposed to, my friend who lived in Princeton, who I was visiting from New York, had a summer job with him cutting his grass, and in the springtime it was already being cut. We went down there on a weekend. I was visiting the house, and then he said, "Let's go cut from Dr. Einstein's grass." I didn't know who Dr. Einstein was. 10 years old, 11 years old, and we can get a quarter. And in those days, you would get 2 double scoop ice cream, 5 cents a scoop, and have a nickel left over. So we ran over there to do it, and then he was already mowing it. It was a very hot day in like April, probably, or I don't remember. And he was mowing with a hand push mower. And he had his sprinklers on, and he had like a bathing suit and those shirts with no sleeves, t-shirt with a loose over the shoulder, and his hair all like that. And he's walking through the sprinkler, and had a great time. And so we were 2 very depressed and disappointed boys sat on the front because he knew that guy, and the guy used to mow it in the summer, and we're looking kind of like going, "Oh, Miss Franklin, how are you guys?" Nice, isn't it? Not there, why are we not getting our quarter? So then he stops mowing at some point, and he goes into the house, and he comes out, and he gives my friend, Callaway, I think Michael Callaway and Michael, he gives him the quarter with the rest of the guys. I didn't ask him about relativity. But he that theory, when the speed of light is an absolute sort of relativity, but that he was just telling that the people would expect it. Because after all, why? At that speed, light suddenly becomes infinite. Its mass becomes infinite according to math, right? So nothing can become infinite because it will never reach infinity, right? Because infinity is not one thing. It's not a whole infinity, it has no limit, right? So you never become infinite. On the other hand, you can't evade infinity. We're all infinite right now because we can't exclude infinity from we are infinite to. Well, could be, or it would be infinite, would it? If it was not part of it, I wasn't immersed in infinity, it would be infinite, right? So, see, that's if we think infinite and find out our opposite, that's what we're both finding that infinite right now. So that's actually where we become Buddha. We're in nirvana and samsara right now. You can become nirvana, this is infinite bliss. You're already there. And therefore, it's your responsibility to figure that out. And you won't do it. You have to learn something to figure it out. Isn't that fun? It's funny, actually. That's really fun. You can't become infinite. It's like you can't become nothing. Infinity is a negation. Right? So you can't become free either. You are free. And if you don't make the right choice, then you blew it. Because you can make a choice. I don't care, they can go on about the unconscious makes you do it. The unconscious made me do it, said Mr. Fry. Nonsense. You chose to do it. Unconscious, never mind. Okay, so the point is, he's in that thing, Buddha was in that illumination of the profound. And then the Buddha, and then we don't have that expression, we have an expression everywhere. But we're so trapped in the present already. Ramdas needn't have worried. We're so trapped in the present, we don't have a word everywhere, do we? We don't imagine time as you could be everywhere in time at the same time, but that's what happens when you're a Buddha. You realize you're always everywhere. So you're still in your past. No wonder you're mad about the bad things that happen. But that's still there. And you're already in your future, but we don't know. But when you're Buddha, you're in every moment in time, as well as everywhere in space. And you realize you always were. And I know that's inconceivable. That means what I said, you can say the opposite. But it's sort of, by saying it like that, you can open your mind about anything could be possible. So you could begin to look for the amazing in life. You can look for the miraculous in life. Okay, instead of thinking you know exactly that everything's going to fit with your expectation. Right? And we've had so many miracles already in our life. Totally. Well, why do we act like this? Nothing. Well, yeah, we can't do anything. It's all done. It's all finished this way. Okay. So the point is, when he did that, Buddha, he's still there. And he's right here. We have a look at this one. Right, and that's why I look, because that's all those hands. And then in each palm he has an eye. So he's like, he's AI. He's not, he's CI. He's compassionate intelligence. And he reaches into everything to try to help. But he knows what needed in the thing, or has the eye there. They say those are the 1,000 eyes of the 1,000 Buddhas of this aeon, in this billion world galaxy that we live in which there are millions of human worlds, actually, as well as other kinds of creatures. Yeah. So, okay, so that's this one. Then I said that by 5 body-mind processes are very important. They're your physical body, which includes your sense fields. So your body includes everything that you see and hear and smell and taste and touch. Touch, you have to kind of contact it. So it's not just what's inside your skin, it's everything within your sensory range is your body, is your material aggregate. They always say form, because form makes it seem more intangible. But they really, the rupa means in that case matter, the most tangible possible thing. So this is freedom. And that predicts actually, the fact that this is the freedom predicts the atomic analysis where most of this is empty space, according to atomic scientists, right? From atomic discovery. And then when you found out that the atom is not an indivisible thing, it has subatomic particles, and then you find out that the subatomic particle is not an indivisible thing that resists analysis, it disappears. And then you pretend if it disappears in a way and it explodes and this and that kind of thing on your computer registering an explosion, you have the secret of mass. And from that, you can pretend that you have the reality by the short hairs. And you get, and because of that, you get paid 40 billion of people's tax money to build another subway under Provence than the one you already had in Switzerland. So you can be in the tropics, you can be in, like, have better vegetables in Provence while you're watching the thing explode atoms. The sort of scam of the scientists up there, just about to control reality, and therefore they are our high priests of our materialism, material religion. Forget about it. So anyway, I didn't emphasize enough about relativity, but relativity is truly amazing. It is amazing grace, actually, already. Okay, so then he goes on, and then in that there are all the different ways of analyzing. Life and death are in here, and they're all not there as intrinsic realities, but that means they are there as relative realities, and that's really important. And I want to say this: I was had that Samantabhadra Sambo made me come up with something interesting that I didn't tell you, but I think is very important, because one of the things that Zen taught is often taught wrong, also in Asia before. Is that, you know, because some sort of high peak experiences, you break beyond the conceptual network of concepts, and you see things in a sort of completely open-minded way where everything is beyond your name for it, your concept of it. So you could stare for an hour in the grain of wood here, and you'd be seeing galaxies in the grain of wood. If you are very drunk or stoned or in some extraordinary state. But so because it doesn't, you don't immediately capture it and turn away from it by dividing yourself from it, by having it fit with your concept, which is the way we normally live, which is why we don't experience anything so that deeply, usually. And therefore, people will teach mystical teachings and Buddhism, Zen or certain things, and they will say, then therefore don't think anything. Throw your mind away and throw your concepts away and sort of just sit there with no thought, and then you do get a buzz if you meditate like that. And you can learn to meditate where you sort of ignore your thinking, and then you don't think, and you think that's enlightenment. And I used to do that when I first learned about it. And my teacher used to chase me and distract me and not let me do that, because that gets you kind of addicted to a kind of quietized state where it's like a tranquilizer. You feel very tranquil because you're not thinking anything. But actually, your habit of thinking things and your absolutizing of your conceptual expectations of things has not been transcended, it's just been suppressed. So it's actually not actually an enlightened state, and in fact, it dulls your intelligence. And then you get like, okay, I'm enlightened, he likes this. The cry of joy when you became enlightened, that peak experience was, duh, I don't know anything. And that's supposed to be really smart. So I didn't tell you the analogy that Sambo drove me to at breakfast. I want to share with you. Right now, you have simultaneous direct experience and inferential experience or rather rational experience at the same time every day when you look at yourself in the mirror. So you know it could be possible to have this kind of paradox embracing and transcending a kind of experience because you do it every day already. Because when you look at your face in the mirror, you see someone who looks like you remind yourself in the mirror, it's through a window in a three-dimensional space. That's what you see. But you don't have to think, oh, wait, this is a mirror. When I was a little baby, I tried to reach the other baby in there, and I hit the mirror. So now I know that inferential experience that it's just a reflection of the surface of the mirror. You don't have to do that. You simultaneously know it's just a reflection in the mirror, right? So in other words, you're having an inference based on past experience, and you're having a direct experience. And in that case, the direct experience is a mistake then. But you correct it, and you don't even notice that you make a mistake. You follow me? So you have a double thing going on there. More complicated than just a love and my shame and whatever. Right? Well, okay. Okay. You can turn it on silent and they can hear you talk. All right. So you all do that. We all do that. So the analogy of the mirror thing is very, very powerful. Because when you're Buddha, you see a suffering being and you totally empathize with them. And you feel their suffering 100%. And to the degree that they can't stand it, you can't stand it. But at the same time, you know they're made of clear light, which is bliss. And they could be dead. And they would just, there's no place to stay when you're dead. It's like you're never in the door there. You can't be in the door. You go through the door, we say, but as we know, a line, an exact line between the outside and the inside has no width. So actually it isn't really there. So you're never in the exact door. You follow me? You're in and out. It's like you're never in the present. We're trapped in the moment. You would say we're in the present. I don't know the future, what it will be. Oh, past is gone. We have a picture like that, but actually the actual split second has no duration, to be exact, down to 10 billionth of a second, nanosecond. It's not there. Even a nanosecond has a tiny bit, has a first moment, and second, and third, and you're out of it. But at the exact time has no duration. It's like being in infinity or being nowhere. You follow? So it's just all our constructs, in other words. So my point is, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and see the reflection wrongly as if there's you or another person through the mirror, and then without thinking, know that it's a reflection in the mirror while you bathe or you put on your eyeliner or whatever you do, then you can be Buddha. And you can see a being as unhappy, feel them as unhappy, be committed and dedicated to helping them relieve that unhappiness, and also see the happiness they're made of at the same time. You follow? Wouldn't that be fun? Actually, the great doctor is the person who sees the health in there. In that person, oh, doctor, I'm so ill, oh, it hurts. But they see that they have the potential of like rebalancing that, and they can tinker around to help that emerge. But they sort of project to the patient that they can do well. So they also have, we all have much more our awareness. It's so complicated. We're such amazing creatures. We really are. We define ourselves. Oh no, I can understand all that. Oh no, Buddhism. Oh, science. Oh, I don't know the math. But it's all just really smart. So that's basically what I wanted to say. Then I just want to say, I don't know if you notice when I chant it, I can keep talking about inhaling. I can keep talking, and I can let me go on. Yeah, so you can do that, and that's very important. But if you like to do mindfulness practice type of thing, where you count your breath, to learn to sort of dissociate from your thinking, to develop one-pointedness, that can be useful. Although you can also get stuck in it unless you contextualize it ahead of time properly. But it's very useful to have that skill, and you can't go too really deep into your mind without developing that ability. But not so that you just have silence in your mind. You know, I used to joke, I must be getting enlightened because the world is getting very, very silent. And finally, my dear friend told me like I'm getting deaf. So that's not the goal. The reasons for being able to not be swept away by impulsive and involuntary thinking is so you could think about one thing with deep penetration and deep insight. You could analyze an atom and have a thought experiment come apart. Like that's how Einstein and those people made all these things. Nobody told them this and that theory about what mathematics didn't tell them. They did thought experiments about it, and then then the Einstein thought experiments about time, slowing things down, and changing mass, and all this kind of thing, which Salvador Dali illustrated with the melting watches. They were working together on that, and they did that by thought experiment, which is by meditating. So, because he obviously was a great bodhisattva, had genius from previous lives, and he cultivated his understanding, and he realized something that other people didn't by going deeper. Okay, so every human being has genius, absolutely. Okay, so that's it. So the mantra of Gate Gate, Alagate Parasamgate Bodhisattva is wonderful, and each Gate means gone. So if you translate it, it would be gone, super together gone, enlightenment, welcome. And Om is indicating that it's already been there from the beginning. And the presence of infinite Buddha's body, speech, and mind, Om is analyzed into that way in every atom. And so it's very good to recite, instead of just counting breath, if you say a mantra. And when you do that, you don't say it loud like we do it this way. You murmur it, and in the murmuring, it's because your speech goes on that one point, and very strong, very quickly, very, very useful. Okay, that's what I want to say. And then everybody tracks. It's very good. But they translated my translation into Spanish. I didn't put the Y after the Gate, so they wrote Om Puerta Puerta. Puerta muy grande. So gate. Okay, so that was what I want to just emphasize the relativity side of things. And because that's underlining the scientific thing about the Buddha understanding and enlightened understanding of reality. And we can question our scientists, and we can stop giving them grants about the 15th dimension and things. And we can demand instead that they spend more time proving to the petropaths, what I call petropaths, You know, it's a special disease. And you can put in between the petrol and the past syllables, psycho or socio, whichever you prefer. The petrosociopath or the petropsychopath. The ones that will not turn the switches, you know, who buy the congressmen and the presidents and buy everything. You know the joke? When the economy is really bad, it's when Exxon lays off 100 congressmen. All right, so now we're going to psychology. And but yeah, that's I'm gonna do another thing. I'm gonna do a different thing about psychology first. What I want to do in psychology is talk about the unconscious. And I want to be a little bit sneaky about Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama, one time at Goa University, when he was dedicating the Dalai Lama chair, which they in Goa, at Goa University, and Panjim, he was asked at the end of a lecture when he was talking about Buddhist psychology. He was asked, somebody said, well, but what about Western psychology? And then he looked at it, naughty, like he sometimes looked around, and he says, kindergarten. Usually he's very polite. I'm pleased with this book. And I love it when he really kind of reveals something. And he says that. And it was like I was in Thailand one time. And it is, you know, for 30 and 40 years, which we started actually, but then I didn't really go often because he's supposed to have a dialogue with Western scientists, but then they're just talking to him all the time about how brilliant they are. And, you know, and he's like daddy or something. Oh, that's really great. Oh, they're doing this, and they're wonderful. And they never ask him what he thinks. Because of course he's a pre-modern backward person, right? He's a native, right? A native informant. They like that he meditates and they think he's cute and sweet. And in his field, they have brilliant ideas. They will tell each other that at lunch. God, I never thought of it that way when I was thinking, when I was explaining to her how bright I am and how great my science is. So I got to that. I said, there's really one time he was in a monastery. They were holding the dialogue meeting in a monastery, and it was live streamed to 15,000 to that month. And there's some guy who was probably unnamed, was talking about quantum paradoxes, you know, like things like the collapse of the wave function, how you know whether the cat is dead or alive until you measure whether it's dead or alive, and then it might be dead or it might be like, you know, all this like cuckoo thing. And then he was saying things like, think that a particle, an atom, and then there's two of them in the same place. That seems impossible, but it isn't. In quantum law, it isn't. All kind of crazy things, because they can't find anything. They make up all these things. So, and then suddenly it separates, but there's no cause to separate. Separates without a cause. And in Buddhist science, that is totally ridiculous. If you describe things like that, something happens without a cause, then it should be happening infinitely without anywhere. Doesn't need a cause, then why is it always happening? Why would it just happen at a certain moment? Etc. You know, there's no specific reason. And it's just totally wrong. So the guy felt he was losing the audience, and he really was. Of course, he was saying they can't wrap their mind around the senselessness of reality, which is what he spoke as his teaching. It doesn't make sense. And then that's really good when you can embrace that. It doesn't make sense. What kind of idea is that? We don't live like, we don't live like, I don't say, oh, I'm going to walk through the wall when I leave this room. That doesn't make sense, but that's what I'm going to do. They don't do that. They walk through the door. You know, practically speaking, it does. So everybody there was being polite as they could be, but Dalai Lama really pushed it beyond. And also, he was about to make a big gift to the organization that raised them money. You know? They give away some book royalties. So he says to the guy. So then the guy felt he was losing the audience. I was in Thailand watching on the live stream, and then he says, the guy says, you know, Your Holiness, we're trying to figure out how we're going to fit ethics into this senseless description of the universe. We quantum guys, you know, and you know, which then will be quantum ethics. because he knows that makes that a lot of happiness. No one's telling him he wants whatever it is to work out to be ethical. And he wants them to be ethical. Oh, great to know. So they say that at the end, they're trying to recapture the vibe of the audience because he can feel that in Wolfgang in his things. And so then Bill says, oh, that's great. He said, if you can do that, then you can connect ethics to this wonderful expectation that you're giving. I'm going to give you a quantum ethical scientist hat. And everybody explodes in laughter. He uneasily kind of laughs. He and his colleague have been giving this quantum senselessness talk. They're kind of laughing uneasily, but they're not quite sure because they knew they sort of lost the audience. And then he says, there's a big laughter, and then the laughter subsides, and then his one says, and you know, that hat will have a lot of holes in it. Dark in this time. I mean, this is what we were staying in a friend's apartment. I had a broken foot, and we were low ceiling, and I'm banging my head in the ceiling. And then laughter, and then both, and they're thinking, I know, oh, like an Australian hat and hot climate, they have ventilation. They were designing the hat in their mind. And then as laughter died down, and then finally it starts his real time. He leans forward and says, to go along with the holes in your theory. And then he completely changes the theater. And then he presented them with a multi-$100,000 check. And I wasn't so happy about that, but he didn't give it to Tibet House. He threw it to Tibet House. But all this happened for them. And he turns into like the waiter in a Chinese restaurant. He's a native again. But he teased them that one time. So I was just going to reveal that. Change their mind. Now Freud discovered, and I used to teach a course at Amherst, which was mandatory for the young faculty I had to teach, and it's mandatory to require course for the student. It was called Darwin, Marx, and Freud. And so if you read Darwin, Marx, and Freud, then you're a modern person. The elite, they all tell you how elite they are. Then I was quite wondering, since they never went to bother to have goat yogurt. They only bought pasteurized ordinary milk, and they couldn't understand us buying goat yogurt. And but they were very elite. Anyway, Darwin, Marx, and Freud. And then I did it in good faith at the time, and I loved all of them, Darwin, Marx, and Freud. I think they're each as smart. Marx was stupid in this revolution, but he was great in his sociology. You know, his analysis was very good. And so I would teach that. But later I realized really terrible, make you feel completely helpless. And it's ingraining that sense that you can't do anything about it. It fits you into the industrial machine, actually, right? Charlie Chaplin in modern times. Because why? You're unconscious. And it makes you scared of yourself. Because what's in your unconscious? Eros and Thanatos. Do you know what Eros means? Freud said it. It means everybody is polymorphously perverse. That sounds scary, doesn't it? Freud in Vienna there. So, you know, everybody's laughing about everything. And then everybody Thanatos is murderously aggressive. So that's our unconscious. We're all Mr. Hyde. We're nice Dr. Jekyll. Yes. We're Jekyll in a way. Oh, yeah, here, have aspirin. But then we're Mr. Hyde, the one who kill everybody. I mean, so you're terrified of yourself, and you're told that your conscious mind is just an illusion of making a decision to have, you know, strawberry or chocolate, and the unconscious knows what it wants. I mean, like 10 minutes ago. They read books like that and get sell them, and then everybody's happy. And then be obedient and do what you want and understand our authoritarian culture. Stand under. somebody else telling you what they're, because you can't understand yourself. You can't know what it is. And the expert will tell you, and God will tell you, and the high priest will tell you, and the king will tell you, and the dictator will tell you. The authoritarian personality of our culture. Okay, so that's your Freud. And you have to be, meanwhile, you're scared of yourself. And then if you have some problem that they don't understand, your autoimmune disease, your body is attacking you, your own body, so you're scared. Oh, my blood cells are attacking me. What can I do? And then I have to buy this and that expensive drug, which won't help, and has side effects. So I won't question that. And then Darwin, oh yeah. Well, I better not have kids because once I've dumped my genes, then you know, I'm no longer fit, and my telomeres are going to collapse and I'll die because I have no purpose. It's just a species. It's like a mechanical thing, like a bunch of Pac-Man, you know. That's in a sci-fi movie. And then Darwin, and then Marx is. I just think whatever my social position is, I'm just completely a creature of my class. You know, so I can't have independent thinking. I have no sociological perception, as we call it in academia. So we graduate those people from Anderson. Naturally, what do they want to do? They're part of a machine. They want to go to Wall Street and become masters of the universe, or to Silicon Valley. They have no idea of ethics, and then they die. It's nothing anyway. So there's no reason to be spiritual. They don't even have a spirit or soul. They are not going to future life because. Finally, the other insanity they will tell you all, and we all of us have to believe it, including me after 60 years, that there is no such thing as a future life. Just going to go to sleep, and I'll be there in the heavenly rest cemetery on Long Island, waiting for the final judgment. But I don't believe in that anymore. So there's no judgment. So it's all consequenceless. Life is consequenceless. So I can be as reckless as I can get away. And that's what I've taught for 55 years. I've been teaching that in that kind of institution. I'm sorry, but no wonder they're firing the presidents. Nice black lady from Haiti got to be president of Harvard, and that was unacceptable. I'm sorry, I'm ranting a little bit, but I think it's important to. The hard thing I write it in this book. Wisdom is bliss, but Americans, please be more self-critical. You're not the highest thing that ever was. We're a potentially really dangerous country. If we're taken over by dictators, we will make a lot of people dead and miserable. We'll continue the colonialism of the last 500 years in a very bad way. So we need to remain chaotic and democratic. Absolutely. Better to do nothing than to be in the hands of Putin and Putin's proxies, oligarchs. Better to be chaotic and get nothing done. Okay. Now, on the other hand, here in this book on this page, you see there's 8 things in the list. Now I'm going to psychology. I think it's scolding Milos. We're so patient though. I love that. So here's 8 things. These things here, the first 4 of them, we meditated the other day. It's where earth goes into water, water into fire, fire into wind, wind into consciousness or space, either one. And those first 4. And we get out of coarse elements. And I was once translating for a Tibetan doctor when Bertolf Capra, the famous guy who wrote the Tao of Physics, about how smart he figured out what Tai Chi means and so on, what the Tao is. But really he was a Western physicist, and he was sneering at Tibetan medicine, Ayurveda, because they have simplistic 5 elements. And he was saying, we have 127 or whatever it is, however the number is, of primary elements. You know, we're so sophisticated, you know, barium, helium, you know, whatever, uranium, all this kind of thing. And the Tibetan doctor got really offended by that. And he said to him, no, we can analyze things into many different pieces better than you. Yeah, we have 5 elements, but then each one of them has 5 sub-elements, and each one of them has 5 sub-elements. So we can get up to 625 in a flash. big one. But you guys, you know what you've done? You've Humpty Dumpty the human being, said. He's speaking in Tibetan. And I thought Humpty Dumpty was a Tibetan word I didn't hear. Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty, come in.
Oh.
I'm trying to translate. This is some big stage somewhere in Washington, DC. What's Humpty Dumpty in Tibetan? And then I says, no, Humpty Dumpty. He said, oh, Humpty Dumpty. So then the people, Capra and the other people in the audience realized that he was accusing them of having Humpty Dumpty people. Because they analyzed them into all these primary things, but then they didn't know how to put it together again about whether they should have spinach or broccoli. And therefore, when they're in the hospital, they're having this and that super mega operation and taking all kinds of really wild drugs, they feed them powdered potatoes and weird Yorkshire steak, like shoe leather steak, of like toxic hormone injected some poor dead cattle. But that's irrelevant because they do it with active ingredients. So he was really, I thought he was really rather bright. And it was before it was sometime before the organic food thing was really going on strong. So anyway, that's the find out this. And that's our conscious mind when we are embedded in our coarse bodies, what is called coarse bodies. And our coarse body goes on with our coarse mind. And our coarse mind is the sixth sense that aligns itself when we're awake all day long with one of our five exterior senses. And very much with our eyes open, with seeing our visual field. We live in our visual field very, very much. So sometimes the audio one too. And the smell, taste, and touch not so much. Therefore, we get excited when we touch something. But we don't pay attention to it normally. We're really out there in the visual thing. And that's related to the earth element, what's hard, something solid that we think we see. And there's unconscious, the next four stages, and this is in the process of death or the process of dissolving when you fall asleep, and which we do every day. We die every night, every one of us. And down here, especially in stages 5, 6, and 7, there is the subtle mind. And the subtle mind is basically luminance, radiance, and immanence, which are moonlit space, sunlit space, and darklit space subjectively, which are not seen with the coarse eye, but are seen with the inner eye, the sixth sense. Because the sixth sense has a subtle level where it is those three states embedded in the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is said to be Salum Tiglet, or in Sanskrit, it is Nadi, it is Vayu, and it is Bindu. Because this was Indian science. The Tibetans are just preserving the Buddhist side of Indian science and refining it actually, and making it more palpable with their whole population, or much of their population, and much more than in a normal agricultural society. That's why they became so highly developed. And that means the za means the nadi, or the nervous system. But in the nervous system, all the circulatory systems in the body, the blood system, the lymphatic system, and the electricity, neural energy system. And then there are the lum is the energies that moves the things around in the system. And the tigli, the bindu, the drops, are the hormonal kind of super subtle things that are kind of very close to consciousness, that create different states of consciousness. But the endocrine system, like adrenochrome, adrenaline, all those things. Oxytocin, the nice female friendly one, cortisol, the nasty male, break it all one, etc. Those kind of things. And then even subtler than that. So that's the subtle body, actually. And in that, the subtle mind of those things. And then within those three states, luminance, radiance, and immanence, there are the 80 subconscious surges. There's like weird lists, like sucking, biting, kissing, desire, moderate desire, slight desire, intense desire, etc. polymorphous perversity as a series of sort of seemingly semi-physical gestures, movements, and also sort of mental things. It's a weird list. And it's like sort of the primal surges, you can sort of say. And then all the hostile ones, aggression, explosion, piercing, etc. Also negative, the murderous aggression stuff is there. And there's 33, 40, and 70, and 7, and then very stupefied, like different kinds of sleepy or semi-consciousnesses are in there. And those 80 are by the normal person when they either die or fall asleep. They just have kind of like impulses, but they don't notice the moonlit space, sunlit space, and the pitch dark midnight space. They don't even notice that it's feel spacious because they're filled with all these kind of surges, you could say. And therefore they go very past them very quickly. But the reason for that schematization, and they're perfectly aware of these heuristic schematizations, is that they can learn to engage with those things. So they feel, and this is why Dalai Lama said kindergarten. He wasn't just being arrogant or facetious. He's being a little proud, but not really facetious. And what he meant by that is, for Freud, if you just overcome excessive repression of those things, but don't express them, of course, because you don't want to turn into Mr. Hyde, you want to be a nice Dr. Jekyll. And so your polymorphous perversity and your murderous aggression, you kind of don't mind having a fantasy about them or something, but you sort of vent them in some way, but you don't go and do them, but you a little bit vent them, and therefore you don't over-suppress that unconscious. But basically it's like a mechanism. It's in principle unconscious because he has to be a materialist, because he wants his psychology to be thought of as a science by the materialist scientists. So he can't say that there's something more subtle than what you can normally talk about as perceive as coarse matter, and some sort of energy that isn't material in the same sense. It doesn't have mass, let's say. It's actually the mind matter hard, what they call hard problem, is no less hard, no more hard actually than the mass energy problem. That's why they go crazy about their Higgs boson. Because what does the energy mean? Wait, it is material, but it doesn't have mass? Wait, what does that mean? When you say matter, it's matter that doesn't matter. And yet it releases and becomes an A-bomb out of an atom. It's under certain conditions. So there's like the infinite energy in a chain reaction. It's something that's supposed to be a little inert piece of mass. And then that's just as mysterious, actually, as mind and matter being interconnected. No less. And so anyway, so you can die with an unconscious intact, in other words, and it's safe because you're going to just be nothing. So what doesn't matter that we have all this unresolved murderousness and lustfulness and greediness in there and confusion and depression? It doesn't matter because you get away from the unconscious, from the self that you're afraid of. You're taught to be afraid of, I suppose, an expert. It just becomes nothing, so you can bear it. That you're walking around a bundle of negative impulses, but you can keep them suppressed, unless you're a trillionaire, you buy yourself a 500 football field yacht. Then you can release them on the yacht curve. So, and then finally, no consequence to that yacht, even though you're running over whales. So my point is, in the Buddhist sense, that's not the case. In the Buddhist sense, that's you that are unconscious. And therefore, the purpose of your life is to get in there like Hercules, clean the Augean stable of your own unconscious, and encounter it and deal with it. And of course, not everyone can do that in those ancient agricultural societies where most farming and doing this and that and believing something good, kind of be good. But it's very relatively small percentage of people are educated, and the societies have relatively less surplus to support people, useless intellectuals, like faculty of universities. They have to be monks if they don't have kids, so they don't have tuition payments and so on. That's really, I never tell university administrators about the free labor they get out of monks and monasteries who are the faculty. Because they would say, they do tell you that. Oh, you want to raise, but you're not in academia for the money. They tell you. And the cost of those educations that you're paying for your children in those elite colleges, you're paying the administrators to have 5 times the salary. was they awarded them themselves, those endowments. But they really, I mean, I don't know. Okay. So my point is, the whole Buddhist psychology is how we deal with the unconscious. So now taking it, when the Muslims took over India, they destroyed every single Tanka, this kind of scroll icon painting, or wall painting. That's a Buddhist, a massive number of Buddhist monastic schools and universities. They were filled like this with these colorful paintings. See these paintings. These are fairly peaceful ones. Over Green Tara, looks peaceful there, but she's about to jump up and get rid of some bad guys. It's quite a forceful lady. Green Tara. White Tara is supposed to be peaceful. And then if you have, well, they're not hanging any of the ferocious ones here, but even have a look at this, all those bristling arms and all those heads, it's kind of scary. And the British and French and Portuguese and people, Dutch, went out into Asia and they saw this kind of thing, they really freaked out. They thought, oh, those savages are really savage. And they really freaked. But what those things are, that's a kind of, when you go out as an astronaut and you go for a spacewalk to fix your solar, solar panel to keep your space station operating, you have to put on a Michelin suit, Michelin man suit, with oxygen, and then you can go out there and fly around like those movie stars do in those movies, floating around. So these embodiments with multiple arms and heads and faces, that's a way of going and dealing with your lust and with your aggression, and overwhelming your own being locked into these negative impulses that are in your unconscious, and cleaning them up and making them behave, and getting where you have that, you take away their energy, and then you can use it consciously and freely in your freedom to do miraculous, wonderful, amazing, wonderful, self-transcending, routine transcending things to help beings. And that's the Mahasiddha, the great adept, the great yogis of India and Tibet and other and Japan, and to a lesser extent, the East Asian ones. But Tibet was amazing, and some kingdoms in India. But the problem with the kingdom that becomes completely, where people really, a lot of people do that in the society, they become quite happy society. They tend to demilitarize. The sort of conquest of others becomes a lower priority to the conquest of yourself, where you become really master of your own energies and you really are able to do it as you are. And they do it for substantial numbers, and therefore that becomes the archetype of what people want to be in that society. And the institution of monasticism, which Buddha invented actually, and then Christianity also used broadly, only really those two. Hindus do it since Buddhism got destroyed. Then they did some themselves. But before that, in Hinduism, it was wrong to be lifelong celibate. You had to have a family and so on for some phase of your life. They didn't have the idea that you would take the energies that we do to procreate and to bring up families and transform yourself into where you experience all other beings as your family, which was the goal of that, of summoning those kind of kinship energies and then transmitting them universally. Where, like Dalai Lama will say, we are 8 billion happy brothers and sisters. Everybody is our brother and sister, everybody. There's no aliens. There are no non-human humans. So we can pseudo-speciate, as the anthropologists call it, but we can then genocide them because they are lesser humans. That's a sort of false thing that we can do that, though humans do that conceptualizingly to get the land or get something away from those other people. And we've been doing it for thousands of years, and we don't have to do it. And Tibet and Mongolia have proven Mongolia, remember about Genghis Khan? As I said, when Putin invaded Ukraine, the president of Mongolia sent a public tweet to Putin, but for everyone to see, with a map of the Mongolian Empire at its highest extent from Europe to China. And he said, good luck, Mr. Putin. Like, try it now. I think it won't work, right? But that's Putin. Portugal, to Vladivostok, to Shanghai, actually, but and throw in Tokyo, I feel like I'll try to do. That's his plan, by the way, in case you didn't know, that's KGB plan. So the Ukrainians are saving us, really. You know, and Buddha allows that, excuse me, those who think that nonviolence is something simplistic. Buddha allows self-defense, definitely, if you are capable of defending yourself. Doesn't like suicidal self-defense, because that just makes the conqueror more angry when they get you, and then they tell you more of you. But if you can defend them and push them out, and then don't invade them, but they know that they won't invade you again, you should. So that minimizes. In other words, nonviolence means minimizing violence. It doesn't mean pretending you can just do it out completely. There always is life and death. And the bliss reality is based, therefore, on someone discovering, like the doctor I told you about yesterday, that death is a kind of, like I gave a lecture just on the Book of the Dead 3 years ago at our Menla retreat center, and a lady who has since passed away, and she had some disease where she had a terminal kind of diagnosis, but she outlived it by 15 years, but she did eventually go. But anyway, she says, "Oh, Bob, you make that sound like so much fun. I can't wait to try it." I said, "No, don't say that. You can't die here." But actually, because that river of bliss is there for everyone. You know, because once they struggle and let go of the inhabiting the body, you know, the body's going to sleep. And they start struggling to get back in the body, which will happen if you haven't really worked on exploring, feeling you are something bigger than your body. It's which there are many altered states that you can do that there. The psychology of those altered states, how to attain them, how to interpret them actually afterwards, not to get stuck in them and so on. It's all very well worked out. That's also why he said kindergarten. And you don't need it. It doesn't mean drugs and everything. Although in a way, the system, the bindu, the drops are drugs. Like there's something called adrenochrome that is a byproduct of the adrenal gland on top of the kidneys that gets you started. You know, that's like psilocybin. It's like a mushroom. I don't think a mushroom is grown in there. I hope not. I wouldn't mind. But you know, our body naturally produces these kind of bindu drops. You know? And as everyone knows, you know, it's an incredible thing. Our body, it's amazing. It has all kinds of its own intelligence. And in this psychology, you know, neuroscience people, they're sitting there, they're still trying their best. One time I was in a faculty department chairman's meeting with president and the vice president and this and that, deans of this and that faculty in Columbia. The lady Darcy is the first name, I forgot the last name. She's was chairman of the psychology department, and she was in a bad mood. I don't know why she came in. She was stormy, and then everybody was saying, "Well, what's wrong, Darcy? What's wrong?" She says, "Oh, I hate my department. I hate it. I hate psychology. It's terrible." "Well, what do you mean? You're chairwoman of the department. Like, what's the problem?" She says, "Well, we don't do psychology anymore. We all just work for Novartis." In other words, they don't read Freud even. They have read much less any knowledge in psychology, and they're just inventing some drugs or looking for which neuron to probe with which kind of thing to create such and such a state of mind. You know, although Dalai Lama loves it. I'll tell you another funny story since you like that. Dalai Lama was at one of the conferences we organized before they started organizing the dialogue, and at MIT, and he met someone who was doing neuroscientific experiments, and he mentioned that they found a place in the brain they could probe that a person would have a very intense, pleasurable, almost orgasmic experience with no content. In other words, they weren't reporting a fantasy or, you know what I mean, and they had no sense of any other location in their body, but they were feeling like waves of blissfulness just by some probe. He said that in this experiment. I don't know what it was, but he said, "Oh, that's awesome." I don't know what to say. He was so excited about it. Then we went in the green room during a break, and he was talking with his translator, who was a monk, and me, and he was so excited about there was an argument about 2,000 years old in the Buddhist monastic rule or literature about a monk who was raped by an ex-nun who had been in love with him. But she must have been like a Muscle Beach. And she overwhelmed, and she quit the order herself. She quit being a nun. She couldn't stand it. And then she ambushed this guy when he was going off to beg in town for his lunch. And she raped him, and he apparently became erect and actually even ejaculated, and then confessed in the monthly confession ceremony of breaking a rule. And all the monks wanted him expelled from the monastery because he had sex, you know. And he said and then Buddha asked him in the anecdote, he said, well, venerable blah blah, were you mentally engaged in the pleasure? And he said, no, I wasn't. I went into this and that samadhi, and but she didn't hurt. She worked her will with my body, but I just wasn't there. I know you have that ability, and that's fine. You can stay. And then it was Buddha favoring him because he was from the same clan, or because of whatever, because they liked him, or was it a right judgment by Buddha? And they've been arguing for centuries over this. And Dalai Lama says, Buddha was right. Buddha was right. It's possible that your body can go through emotions and no content. And he was so excited about it. And there was a young MIT guy who was a young neuroscientist who was hearing this very excited conversation in Tibetan. So then Dalai Lama notices that he's listening to it with awe and tells his translator, "Oh, tell him what we're talking about." And you try, "Oh, I can't tell him about that." So I had to explain it. Dalai Lama really one monk stayed and I had hard on and he was ejaculated. You know, sense recovery. Great. But you let him stay in, there's a good one in order. That's how he knows, right? Neuroscience is proven. But I was completely floored. What are they thinking about those monks? It was great, it was really impressive, priceless one. And but the point is, so it's really deep. And I call it inner neuroscience. So you see, if you develop, for example, one-pointedness, where you can focus your mind very strongly on, and you can measure yourself, you can visualize in your mind a dot of blue, colored blue, sort of just hanging in space, like or a little globule, a little three-dimensional sphere of blue. And just hold the sight of that as you're sitting there breathing as a yogi, you know, for 1 or 2 hours. Then you have true one-pointedness. But that's nothing in itself. I mean, that's just a mental ability, but make your mind be able to do that. And then you take that kind of focus and you put it on a part in the vagus system, in the area of the heart, for example. And you put your mental energy right there and hold it there, and then the size of a mustard seed, tiny little thing. And then you use a mental microscope and you visualize a multi-armed couple there, or you visualize a whole building with 30 or 40 people in it who look like gods and goddesses or something. And then hold that for a couple of hours. And you'll find out all kinds of remarkable things. And even you can sort of do in thought experiment, you can realize that even a subatomic particle, if it's a particle in Cartesian map, when you make a dot at XY, you know that the dot is not the XY exactly, because the dot has this side and that side, the other side, and the other side. So therefore, the exact spot is actually, there's nothing that can mark it. Any mark would be not the exact spot, right? So anyway, the exact dot XY, or in 3 dimensions XYZ, has no sign. But actually it's not there. To be precise, it has to be not there.
Right.
And the Tibetan and the Indians invented the decimal system. Now the Romans never managed it. I always feel so sorry for Roman stone carvers. When some emperor wanted this building memorialized, he had to go MMCCCPDDL, it never stopped. There's no zero. So those Italians saying that even their thoughts, and they never figured out about zero. Advanced European Greeks have done No zero. Come on, it's so advanced. Anyway. So that's called inner neural science. That's an inner probe with your own mental energy. And it's not, it's sort of, you don't have to say it's non-material, it's super non-material. Because it's actually mattering, but the word matter doesn't mean anything unless it's used opposite of mind. You know, so something with physical size and non-physical size is not a problem because the words, neither word really captures what matter is and what non-matter is. But they are meaningful in our language because they're the opposite of each other. So hot and cold hot means something when it's opposite of cold. But if everything is absolute hot, that doesn't mean anything. Or if absolute cold doesn't mean anything, because it doesn't have the opposite. That's why Buddhism does not really teach. They do have a thing about it's all mind. But they're just doing that to counteract the idea that it's all matter by ordinary materialistic people. Ultimately, mind and matter is a useful dichotomy. You know, vive la différence. Without the other one, it doesn't have any meaning. Because the meaning is just a play of concepts. The meaning doesn't come from attaching itself to anything absolute in any object. There's no absolute reference in anything. There's no absolute referentiality. Intrinsic referentiality doesn't exist. Okay? So Bob Thurman, there's no thing there that Bob Thurman really lands on. That never changes, it's always Bob. Okay? There's no Bobhood. Actually, my students want to put it on my door in Emerson, and they heard about it, and they did it, found it, and they called me a New Yorker, a cartoon about some sort of big bird sort of creature going on, and other people would say, "There it goes, Bob, you're wrong." There's no Bob in there. There really isn't. But it have Bob. If you go, "Hey Joe, time for breakfast," I don't know, I'll be like so. So I react like Bob is a reference. But that's just a habit. It's a routinization of concepts. But concepts don't really fit on the world, which is why poets are the undergoing legislators of mankind. So anyway, so this is psychology. And then what we discovered, therefore, that there's no death. That's what it means, that there's no death. In other words, it's like you can't be in the door. We are not in the present moment. Because a moment will have a beginning and an end and a middle, and duration, and to be there. But an exact moment will not have any duration. Therefore, it can't be there. If we were never in the present, that was impossible. Ramdas, I'm sorry. Okay. We're in something that's inexpressible already. What's really going on here and now? It really is. And if we're really open to that, we're really open-minded, then we're ready to see something new at all times. And we're open for the miraculous. And then I wanted to say today, one of the ones I think I went over to the little shrine over there where the Shakyamuni Buddha is sitting. And in some East Asian temples, you would see an Amitabha over there. Or in Korean ones, sometimes you see a medicine Buddha. They really make a big thing about medicine in Korea, but not so much in Japan, but although they did initially. And that's the reason Shakyamuni is there, is that the sect that built this place initially in 1902 apparently founded it. In honor of them, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about the Lotus Sutra. This is a really wonderful sutra that in that particular school, they make that sutra the most model. And in that sutra, the Buddha, in the beginning of it, the Shariputra, the same Shariputra, who's the foremost disciple, but always gets in trouble because of his sort of dualistic attitude. And Shariputra thinks Buddha is the devil, and he runs away. And then he comes back because Buddha, in that says that I didn't really mean the four friendly fun facts that everything is suffering. I just said that to some people who were too proud of themselves, and they needed to notice that there would be a better way, a more happy way of being than what they think is worldly pleasure. But he sort of rejects his own earlier teaching to monks, who are thinking they're wrong somewhere else. And then when Tripod said, I heard you say that, he said, I thought you were the devil, and you were proposing as the Buddha and telling us a whole new thing. Because now you're saying everything is already perfect. It's already great. It's magnificent. Every atom has a golden Buddha in it. And you're giving out a vision like that. And so, but then he comes back and he says, oh, then I thought maybe it was written Buddha, and maybe I have to revise my view of reality. So he came back, and then he said, okay, so everything, it feels really great here now. I'm sure you're not the devil, but why didn't you tell us beforehand? And then Buddha gives a bunch of parables. And the prodigal son parable is originally taught in that sutra from around the same time as the time of Christ, actually, in the first century before the Common Era. It's in there, where you are like the parable, but the version of it that they tell is that the prodigal son who comes back to the wealthy father, and he's so depraved and so confused and so freaked out, he doesn't recognize his father, and he doesn't know its place. And actually, he would be overwhelmed if he found out he was the heir of the wealthy father. And the prodigal son story, and that's the case. And so you guys are like that. And I put into it, and he tells a story about a doctor who was away on a medical trip, and he had the naughty sons who broke into the medicine cabinet and ate a bunch of poison and got all crazy. And when he came back, they were completely nuts, and they didn't know what to do, and they wouldn't do anything. He told them, so he couldn't give them the antidote. So then what he did was he put the antidote back in the metal thing and locked it up and went away again. So then they stole it again, and then they took it and they cured themselves. So he made parables like that. And then he has another famous one about the father who has many children, and then they're all playing, and then he knew the personalities of each child, and some of them like deer carts, some of them like horse carts, and some of them like ox carts. And so then the house they were in was burning. And so then the father said, get out of the burning house, I've got deer carts and horse carts and ox carts for you outside. And told each one what they wanted. And then when they all ran out, all they had was a bunch of ox carts. And then he said, was that a bad lie I told you to think sorry for that? And he said, no, okay, yeah, I know, I like the deer party, I want to be in the deer. I don't want to have to be a ox cart, I have to be a bodhisattva and save all beings, like the bodhisattva. So he did, so they two of them. Then Buddha says, okay, now I'm going to teach the Lotus Sutra. And when I do, there's a Buddha, ancient Buddha, who after he left his body and attained total nirvana, he said he would always come back when any Buddha in any world, anywhere in the multiverse, in the Buddhaverse, would teach the Lotus Sutra. He'll always come back. So he's going to come back if I do teach the Lotus Sutra. Do you want to see? This is the Buddhist version of the return of the mummy. And you want to see that Buddha? His name is Prabhutaratna, the fusion of Jules Buddha. Oh, yeah, we want to see Prabhutaratna. So then there's a rumbling sound, like an earthquake. And then a giant stupa that's like half a mile tall comes up out of the ground. And they are all floated up, levitate in air up around the main part of the sutta. They're not far away, they're very high, the whole vast assembly. And then he says, do you want to see the Buddha Prabhutaratna? And they say, yes, we do. So then he opens the little gate, on a stupa, they have like a little door, up on a certain part of it. And he opens it, and actually in the sutra it says, when he opens it, it goes like a rusty bone. Really like opening the mummy's sarcophagus. And then the doors open, and there's a mummy Buddha in there. A dead body is sitting there, perfectly preserved. And then the dead body says, oh, wait, Shakyamuni, you're going to teach the Lotus Sutra. He talks. The mummy talks. And then, yeah, I'm going to teach it. I'm glad to see you, Prabhu. They greet each other. And then Prabhu will come sit down next to me, he says. And so then Buddha sits down. So you have the live Buddha and the dead Buddha sitting together in the middle of the stupa. And then he starts teaching the Lotus Sutra. And then the Lotus Sutra is the teaching that everything is perfect just right now. It's all bliss. There's no death. And death, what we call death, is where super subtle soul consciousness, which is not those three consciousness of the subtle consciousness. It's the clear light consciousness. It's like a drop of clear light, but which is impossible to have a drop of course, because clear light is infinite, but it's like that. And it's already connected to clear, because it's sort of the place where the being that has separated itself for whatever reason, and then feels that it's separate from everything else. It still does that with energy. It's the portal through which the energy of this infinite energy that can be drawn on infinitely, but itself does not impose itself on people, and therefore not the creator of life. It's not like somebody else's will makes your life, it's your own choice, because it's really freedom. And then that's it, that's the soul, if you will. So that's our Buddha nature, that's what we call our Buddha nature. And then that's the super subtle one. But then it carries those three, the subjectivity of the separated being are these three: moonlight, sunlight, and dark light, and black light. Those are the three awarenesses that then create different embodiments in nature and so forth. And so it sort of drags them along with it. And what Buddhahood is then, therefore, where that super subtle soul one is sort of aware of all of the other the whole range of awarenesses, all the way to the coarse ignorant ones. So, because in order to be a Buddha and be one with other ignorant free beings, you have to experience them from the inside. So it's inconceivable. I'm trying to explain it, but I realize it's inexplicable. It can't be. That's why Buddha said, I have discovered a reality which is profound, peaceful, clear light or transparency, unproliferating, in other words, it's not imposing itself, and it's uncreated, meaning it's just always been that, like that. It wasn't created, it has no beginning or end. It's just the way it all is. So it's sort of very close to it, and nothingness experience is one of the ways of being aware of it, being open to it. But it's not nothingness, it's everythingness and everywheness. And it's infinite energy, which means it doesn't do anything on its own will. But anybody that somehow wants to use it any way it wants, it can be available. And then, but one is conscious of at that level, and then consciously connecting that to everything else. So it isn't like Buddha leaves when you become enlightened, you want to leave into a place that's separate, and the clear light is underlying something separate. It's like you're aware that that's always been the case. And we're right now clear light. So we're like the person who looks in the mirror and we see something separate in another space, but without thinking, we know it's just on the surface of the mirror, it's an illusion, it's illusory, right? And the fact that we can have the illusion means that, and see it in the wrong way, means that we are relating to it. And, we are misperceiving it as a three-dimensional space through the window of the mirror. And only Alice in Wonderland goes through the mirror, right? We have a dog who will look at the mirror and just keep barking ever at that nasty dog in your suitcase or something in front of him. He doesn't get tired. Well, he does kind of pass out, then he goes back at it. So he can't create never. That's the inference. So somehow it's a place where we reach, where we feel all right, but we do it without having to leave this place. But to first go down through the unconscious, clear away all those drives where they're just pure energy, and then be able himself to embody that energy only in constructive and creative and friendly and kind ways. So that it doesn't get caught in a self-other difference where that it could push in some way to be harmful to any other. And we are simultaneously always there. Everything is always, it's like being aware of our infinity and finitude at the same time. And having the mistake of thinking of the finitude and realize the mistake proves the infinity. Again, I can't express it, because he said, so it's like a deathless elixir, he said, is this experience, this thing that I have experienced, this reality that I have experienced. This is what Buddha said. according to his other argument. Then he said, whoever I show it to or try to express it to, they won't get it. So I'm going to be quiet and stay here in the garden, in the forest. That's what he said. And then some people say that, they're saying, oh, then Buddhism is just made up by other bunch of people. They're saying, no, that's also not the case. He only says that to what Sambo asked me, because he doesn't want people just to think that if they just repeat whatever he says, that's somehow their membership of Buddhahood or Buddhism, and that's all that saves them. No, he wants them to think about where they will learn to find out for themselves. Because although you can't express it to anybody, and when you experience it yourself, you cannot express it to yourself, because it goes beyond your conceptual framework. But on the other hand, there's a way of doing that where you also can include the beauty of your conceptual framework. You realize that language itself is a magnificent art, which human beings use to knit themselves and fit themselves together. The language is the way they do it. And so even though it doesn't capture things, reality, it creates perspectives on them, vectors, aspects that are that bring out the experience of the beauty. So Buddha is sort of like a coach of a team, and he tells them how to make the movement, what's the play, and how you're going to get to the touchdown. But he can't do the touchdown for the people. And he doesn't want them to say, oh yeah, okay, the coach is so great, the coach makes the touchdown. No, they have to make the touchdown. But that's education again. Great teacher of education, a good teacher of education doesn't think they're just indoctrinating the student. They think the student, and Dalai Lama always says, he says, think of, if you doesn't make sense to you, reject it. Don't just take what I say and think Dalai Lama said this or said that. Chew it over, doubt about it. Find out what you think is wrong, what do you think is right. Whatever you think works out with you, use that. And that's the way you do it. And then he gives an example that Buddha gives, where like a goldsmith who buys gold, melts it, cuts it, and puts it on a touchstone, and then he knows it's real gold, then he uses it. It's quite wonderful, I think. And this relates to my what I call my consolation prize. And I don't know if you maybe already heard me tell it, some of you were here last year. I always try to leave people with that consolation prize. And then a consolation prize is what you give to a loser, right? The winner gets the prize, but the consolation prize is for the loser. So I awarded from reading these different books and from Lotus and sort of thing. I awarded myself a consolation prize because I'm still not a Buddha. After 60 years of working hard at it, and probably many, many lifetimes too, I still am not. But I will be, but I know I will be. I'm very confident I will be, put it that way. And then when I am, I will know that I was already that, but I just didn't know it. So right now, we're at the end of this our little time together, for which I thank you, because of your curiosity and your open-mindedness. I've been looking again at things that I wrote and things that I think and say, and see new things in them and learn more. And hopefully that process happening encourages you that you're going to more, you'll find it. And so I'm very grateful to you. But a class is always about the students, not really about the teacher. The teacher is the servant of the student. I was into his Chinese restaurant waiter mode, but he's really strenuously teaching someone. I remember watching him from the side in Switzerland with a huge 10,000 audience. The way he was speaking to people when he was telling this thing about, you do it like a goldsmith buying gold. Don't just accept it when somebody says so, even though I say so, don't think so. Buddha says in one Tantra thing, he says, oh, I lie all the time, he's saying. Meaning he knows that when he says things, people are going to take it in an overly absolutized way. So there's something, when he says form or matter, people will take it, oh, real matter. They'll think he means a real thing. And my old Mongolian used to beautifully say it, my original root teacher used to say, people think they're real. And they're right. They are real. They only get into problems when they think they're really real. And they exaggerate it. Because our, you know, a relative, like an illusion, magical realness is something more flexible, more resilient. More easygoing than the real. So anyway, so that's the consolation prize. So right now, we maybe don't think this is nirvana, we're doubting, this is someone else doubting. He's wondering what to do. I think he's smiling anyway, and there he is. And so we feel that we're gonna get somewhere else, which will be great. And but they say, and that I feel is acceptable. But when you get there, they'll realize we were always there. So then that means that, and this past moment, which at that time, at least in my case, I don't know about yours, in my case, that will be in the past, but it will still be here. So I will revise my experience of being here as being nirvana samsara non-dual. One foot in nirvana, one foot in samsara. And that more complex, wonderful idea of enlightenment as the extreme tolerance of cognitive dissonance. Which I think is really great. Otherwise, what is enlightenment? It's like passing out and falling asleep, or being neurotically and frenetically awake. Right? It's being asleep and awake at the same time. Okay. Don't you think? So thank you so much, everyone. I assume time is up. And I couldn't charge my iWatch. No, never mind. So they will quickly become like Manjushri, like Shakyamuni. You can see the giant stupa with the dead Buddha and the live Buddha, and telling us everything's perfectly fine. And in the light of everything being perfectly fine, anybody who is destroying things with the idea that he's going to make it better when he owns it, that person we feel is very unfortunate, and we feel great compassion for that person, although they may be killing other people, and they think they're alive, they are actually doing more worse than killing themselves. They are creating futures for themselves that are really, really good. So we feel great compassion for them all. May we quickly become Manjushris ourselves, to be able to quickly make them just equal to us, and therefore let them, as they say in the hip hop world, give it up and relax and it's kindness. So that they could resign, they could all go to their different Mar-a-Lagos and forget about Congress. They'd be so much happier. But you know, sometimes you have to forcefully oppose them. Unfortunately, that's sometimes the case. All compassionately. So, but we're not trying to become enlightened to lord it over the rest of the world. We're trying to become enlightened to be equal to all of our brothers and sisters, so we can all be happy as quickly as possible. Pero allí no nos dan, que se llaman por donde, que llaman a ti, sana. Pero allí no nos dan, que se chanting, say one for okay. Okay, is it okay? Are you happy? Everybody happy? Anybody happy?
They wouldn't dare.
What?
They wouldn't dare.
They would. Good. After they say happy was the name of the Nile in ancient Egypt. And of course, because of the Nile, they could live. But that may be the source of Egypt, or if the I never see it's happy. That was, I think, the Nile's Egypt's name.
Well,
Yeah.
you said that our body extends as far as our senses. So does
Yeah.
that mean our entire world as we perceive it is our body?
In a way, yeah. Well, if you include the sixth sense, where we can imagine being everything, being infinite, we can sort of imagine that. Since we think infinite has intrinsic identity as infinite, but whereas you never reach the landing for it. But that's like opening the mind, right? And that's why freedom, I'm so happy too, that I switched our Israelites chanting, all things are related for matter is freedom, freedom is matter. That's it. That's a real paradox. Say that. Because matter is from obstructing, it causes obstruction. But that's not freedom. Say matter is freedom. Its ability, its way of relating is to cause obstruction. So it chooses to cause obstruction. I think that's very fun. So like that, yes. So therefore, why would we feel that we don't have enough property, for example, enough land? We have to like take somebody else's land. Why we are one with everyone. And that's why Dharma said we're all. But on the other hand, we don't. Other people don't necessarily want to be sort of mash up in a soup with us. So in other words, they can be brothers and sisters. All beings are our kin. Like the Lakota Indians used to say, "Oyatukenyasin," something like that. Oyatukenyasin, which means all things are my relatives.
Mhm.
No, they obviously didn't have like really unpleasant relatives. Sometimes you can get, but they're really nice. They're really nice. Everybody wants to be nice. Everybody wants to be loved. Oh yeah, the amazing. Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's the great thing. We never can understand infinity, but when we truly love, that is infinity. So when the understanding is the love, actually, that I thought I had a thing like that, the click like that the other day. I forgot about it. When we really love, why do we enjoy being in love? Because we somehow touch clear like that. Because love is the will to the happiness of the beloved. And so we temporarily forget about all our dissatisfactions and all our limitations and this and that. And we don't care about being loved at that time because we're so much in love with it. So that true love is the wisdom. That's why Heart Sutra, wisdom, prajna paramita, the wisdom itself is the bliss. And the bliss is the love of the other, of all our bliss, of everything. And in a way, oneself is one's non-loving self is also beloved by oneself in the process of being in love. Because love is wanting the other to be happy, so there has to be an awareness that there is such a thing as happiness. So to truly love, you have to feel that there is that love in yourself. It has to overwhelm your usual complaint about yourself. So that's why wisdom is bliss, and reality is bliss, and it's proven when you're in love. And so a Buddha is a being who fell in love with the whole universe. And when you fall in love with everything, that's when it can be yourself. You're in love with it all because it's yourself, or you can love it all just because it's lovable.
Yeah.
Self and love. Right? So the love itself is the realization. That's really cool. That's the second. Yes, please.
About the title of your book, Wisdom is Bliss.
Yeah.
My first reaction was like, the common saying, ignorance is bliss. And
Yes. So
so
that's what I wanted from when, as I told you, my original working title was Buddhas Have More Fun. And the reason for that is I had an artist friend years ago told me that he didn't want to nirvana himself. He was a little bit of a party animal and he was an artist. And he said if nirvana, what bliss is only when you break free of some obstruction. And if there was some sort of permanent kind of bliss, it's unimaginable to me. It would be like the whole universe is a giant jar of Vaseline. And so you to know the really himself. But his habits of this. But it was stuck with me that therefore, for being a Buddha is the perfection of life, to fully embody the life force itself. Then that it maybe is boring, so I was a little uncertain about it. And then what I realized is, then my friend Mark Epstein helped me. He wrote a book called psychology book, which the subtitle was "How to Get Over Yourself." I forgot the first part. Oh, advice not given. That's what it was. As a shrink, some things he didn't impose Buddhism on his clients. So the title was "Advice Not Given: How to Get Over Yourself." So then I realized that so the Buddha, yes, is over themselves. So yes, they are bored as far as a bliss of release, a moksha type of bliss, the letting go part. Because everything is totally let go. On the other hand, they encounter, because of total empathy, and unfortunately, some Buddhist teachers go around saying empathy is dangerous and don't be empathetic, compassion is not empathy, and blah blah blah, which has an aspect to it, but it's actually really wrong. Like as if there was an enlightenment where you're just immunized and you don't feel anything. You don't feel others feeling. Then there's no compassion there. Compassion comes from not being able to bear the suffering of the other. That's how it's defined, So like we can't bear our own, like I don't ask my hand to get off a hot pot, like, oh, shall I be kind to you today? No, we just pour. So that helped me. So then you're free of wishing any more bliss for yourself. But on the other hand, where your bliss is that you're feeling the suffering of infinite being. And you are skillful enough to help many of them overcome that because you love them anyway. And then you enjoy their release. And since there's infinite numbers of them, you're having more fun than just being happy yourself as they click off into happiness, which they have to do themselves. You can't force them, you can't bomb them into bliss. So that's why Buddhas have more fun, was answering my other old friend about how perfect bliss is offering. And actually, the way they put it in Tantra is that the subtle mind is the super subtle mind is the bliss of life. Clear light is love, is bliss. In that sense, God, if you don't make it a person owned by a particular tribe or family or nation or whatever, if you realize it's that infinite love force, then that is bliss. And so therefore, that is always wanting anything in its sphere to be blissful. It's wanting to spread automatically. And it skillfully opens doors to those who are locked up into a theater of suffering, turn things into their own life. Like poor Matthew Ricard, my friend Matthew Ricard, his father was a philosopher, so he's in touch with all kinds of French, heavily bourgeois, smoking, Calvados, drinking, like French intellectuals. J'aime ma souffrance, I don't like those Buddhists. Je ne sais pas vrai. That's a hedonism, blah, blah, blah. And he wrote a beautiful book trying to prove happiness was okay. Them, as they say they're on the left bank, but they're go, I like myself, really. And so that's it. So they say that the super subtle mind is the bliss mind. And so the difference between realizing emptiness with an inferential mind at the coarse mind level, which is using concepts and so forth, through negation to open the mind by negating those things you otherwise think you're closing on. Because the negation never closes on the non-elephant in the room. It just clears the room of the flexibility of an elephant and then it said, well, go somewhere else, it's in the room. So it's opening the mind. And so, but that is done with the conceptual, that meaning of conceptual and experience and direct experience. But at the deeper level, the super subtle mind is localized. The subjectivity is bliss itself. And so it's a bliss realizing freedom, realizing its freedom. And it realizes its freedom by loving everything in its scope. And then that's intensifying the bliss. And therefore, Buddhas have more fun. But then we didn't keep Buddhas have more fun because the people hear Buddhas and they think Buddhism. And in the early chapter of this, I say, what we're interested in here is not Buddhism, but we're interested in is Buddhism.
Question is more about the difference between knowledge and wisdom, because when we say ignorance is bliss, we're really talking about knowledge of certain facts that are maybe undesirable to think about, and that's why it's better to just kind of avoid those facts or not think about
That's
them.
what we say ignorance is bliss, yeah.
Right.
But I wanted for this one, when between my editor and me, we came up with this one. She also wanted to make Buddhism is realism, which is one of my slogans. because that's why you want to know reality. When you really find reality, then you'll be happy. But so she put that, and I wonder what was some bliss there. So, because what I want the takeaway for people is to work on, which we can't be instantaneously done, to work on trying to live without fear of being afraid of everything. Even death, it's okay if it has to be death. In other words, that means if I letting go, they're catching me is the network of love. You know, and I think monotheists can do that. The mystic ones do. They go beyond the idea of their personal tribal thing or the French and the Russians or this kind of projecting some omnipotent authoritarian into the universe, and they get into the mystical heart, which is like pure love, and they touch on this in their life. So that's all right. I have made my peace with God actually only fairly recently. So I was always annoyed with God because of Christianity made me annoyed. God is omnipotent and he's all love, but he only is going to have one kid, one time, one place, and then he chooses to make him a Jewish rabbi, and then he chooses for everybody to be anti-Semitic. I mean, what's wrong with that idea? It's cuckoo.
If I understood you correctly, this fear comes about through materialism. You were talking about Freud and Marx and
Darwin.
Yeah, and how this like materialistic view of the world brings about fear of the reality.
No, I don't. Not only that. I think that the nihilism of post-Western Enlightenment culture is actually a step towards freedom, away from being terrorized by different kinds of monotheism of a vengeful God, a punishing God, a hell. Like when you see condemning people to hell, a sadistic God, actually, as Shelley and Keats called it. I think it was a step away from that, and it was good. It was useful, therefore, in a sense. But it was when exaggerated, went too far and deified nothingness, and by deifying the nothingness, it made people to too reckless a version of freedom. Too callous and a heartless version of freedom instead of a loving version of freedom, and so that's why I go against that. But we're very. For example, if you're meditating, the one meditation we didn't do, which I usually do, but I didn't get it this time, where you look for your real self in yourself, and there's a systematic way of doing that using that regular other patterns of analysis, and you don't find anything. Actually, really, when you do it, and then you cope with that. And when we do that, we do discover that lack of that self that we thought is the source of our impulses tells us, I hate this, or I want that. And then we feel we have to do that, even if it's harmful to our own bodies. People will kill themselves, to get something or to destroy something. And there is no such absolute source of our thought. It's only relational. That gives us resilience to question ourselves. So when I do that, I don't know. I forgot what I'm talking about. I got totally lost.
It's all right.
But no, I want to read this question. When you do that, I never do. When you do that, you can use the quantum discovery of 1926 and the admission of the failure to pin down some absolute piece of matter, which is what they've been running away from ever since. After Einstein himself said God will not play dice, and they all run away from it, more or less. Some are not, but most of them are. And when but you can use that in meditation by simulating, not feeling that there's even an atom of Thurman in there, that it's indivisible, and everything divides and it disappears, and that didn't kill me. I'm still here as a relational being, and that's a more free way to be. And because I can almost adapt, it's resilient. It isn't rigid. It's a rigid identity. It's openness of identity and a flexibility of identity, right? So that's what I want to say. So I'm deeply grateful, and I like this one to be all polite with them, but on the other hand, we do have to overcome The idea that we're the smartest beings that ever walked the earth. Our culture is. Individuals almost made regular. Einstein gave me order. You know, we're not doing any work at all. It was so wonderful. I got a big double scoop of peach ice cream. And I think, but, it's springtime. But nowadays, our scientists, right, like 14,000 scientists contribute to the IPCC, you know, that Al Gore Nobel Peace Prize winning statement that within, not 2100, but within like 2060, we're really screwed up here. And we're not going to be in Hawaii, the guys in the dugouts in Hawaii or New Zealand, the trillionaires, they're not going to escape the issue. Actually. And we sort of all know that, but somehow they don't rub it in hard enough to get the petropaths to do something voluntarily and intelligently right now. And the Jamie Dimon type, who lends them the money to do more exploration for more unlearnable reserves. So the stock price will go up. It's so short-term thinking. Ridiculous. And instead they're doing 14 dimensions and just playing around and scamming people that the mathematics is a mystical thing that will capture final control of reality for the ego, which will never happen, right? The ego has to go to Hawaii and learn to surf. And can't control that wave, but it can play with the wave. And it's down. Next life, in the case of New York, not this life. Right? What do you think?
Thank you.
Is that all right? So love knows, right? Bliss knows, I think. That's what they say in contact. You know with your subtle mind. And that's the one that really makes you magical. Massive. We already ended our fun. Any more questions? I don't mind. I don't know if anybody else has. Thank you so much for that. For really taking that. By the way, anybody who does meditate and do mindfulness, you should have a mirror. And now and then check your space. And check out how beautiful it says. You know, when you smile, even if you have no content about your smiling, because you really like it, you like to stop. But then it will produce endorphins. And so if you go and look at people meditating in a group, everyone's pretty frowning out. You're gonna look at that. And if you help force yourself to smile, it's a little bit like an endorphin with no content. And I think that makes you feel better. The other secret, of course, is to have short sessions of meditation and quit while you're ahead. You push yourself on a so you want to go back to it. You push yourself, then you'll find excuses not to do it if you like me. Watching Instagram. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maria, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Rachel, Mache, Kutan,
Thank you.
And I found
The beautiful little temple that even I've ever seen, even in Tibet and for branding. This is the most beautiful little temple.
it really
You're
is.
very lucky to have.
It really is.
Like so many treasures. Being in here is like uplifting in itself.
Thank you.
Yes, I also apologize. We were sort of not hanging out for lunch. We're kind of leaving
Yeah.
because
We'll visit you
this is for
sometime.
mining.
Oh, thanks, Bob.
Was we were thinking we have to go see my movie.
Come back next year.
Yes, we have to make this a tradition, even if.
I hope so.
Even if it's twice a year.
I'm at
that's okay.
82, 83. I don't know.